Greetings, Dandavats. Hope you're all having a good day. Here's something which I hope will give you a few minutes of cheer in your hearts. The third reading from the upcoming book, the second canto, Canto to the Saviour Divine, Sri Nitaichand, by Sripad Mahayogi. The old Shah. What about those people over there? Said the old man. The young boy said, pushing on his pole ever closer, pushing the boat to the banks. He said, they can't see us while we're in the bamboo on this side. Why worry about them? The old Vaishnava remembered that while the old Shah had encouraged writing in Bengali and had even published a few books, the new Shah was different. He ridiculed the tolerance of his father and had imposed strict Sharia law. He ordered the destruction of many Vaishnava texts and outlawed the community of Sri Chaitanya's followers, leaving only some formal temple worship that could be controlled through taxation. The water rippled quietly. The current was stronger here. The boat rocked a bit and began swaying to and fro as the boy plied through the waters. He steered the boat ever closer to the bank. They were reaching the shore. The water was shallow here and brown with mud. Tell me a story, old man, said the boy. It's a long way to where you're going. It's at least 2 days by boat, if the current is right. I'm going that way myself, but if you tell me a story, I'll take you for free. The boy's words shook the old Vaishnava out of his reverie. He looked at the boy. Well, my son, what would you want to hear? You're old, said the boy. What's your story? Who are you, and what were you before? And what's in that bag you're carrying so carefully? The boy pointed to the burlap bag that the old man clutched to his chest. That's a long story, son. The boy said, if it's a good story, I'll take you for free. Tell me about the old days around here. They say there were tigers. They moved with the current up the shady side of the river. The sun was hot, but the tamarind trees gave a cool shade. Monkeys played in the trees, watching the dugout glide by. I am called Vrindavan Das. I serve the saints of Vrindavan. My tale is not very interesting to tell. My mother was Narayani. She was a blessed saint, and her father was brother to Srivas Thakur himself. Srivas Thakur, said the boy. Wasn't he one of the friends of Prabhu Nityananda? Himself. And your father? Oh, that was a long time ago, son. His story has faded like the wind on the Ganga. But you are carrying something, old man. What's in the bag? The boy laughed, showing perfect white teeth. Is it gold? Vrindavan Das laughed, and he said, I'm carrying a treasure, all right, but it isn't gold. What then? Asked the boy. It's a book, my son. The current had carried them through a bamboo grove out of sight of the Shah's men. The moss faded into the background on the other side of the river. They glided through a shady part where trees overhanging the water gave them shade. A cool breeze blew. And what is this book, sir? I am poor and uneducated. My only chance for learning is to hear from saints like yourself. The old man smiled. The treasure of the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Then let me show you, he said, as he untied the twine that held the burlap sack, reaching inside with care. He withdrew a carved box. Opening the lid of the box, he showed the boy. There was a stack of dried palm leaves as thin as paper. Each leaf was inscribed with tiny pinpricks tattooed with black ink. There must have been 100 leaves in the box. The bag held more than a dozen boxes. Is that a book, sir? Asked the boy, who had never seen such a device. How does it work, old man? Vrindavan Das replied. It is written on palm leaves. This book is the story of God himself, who appeared here in Bengal as Sri Chaitanya. Sri Chaitanya is none other than Krishna himself. The book also tells the life of Nityananda Prabhu, who is the first expansion of Krishna as his brother Balaram. They lived and taught divine love, Krishna Prem, here in Gaudadesh in the time of Srivas Thakur, my mother's uncle. A group of cranes wandered in the sand of the riverbank, looking very much like a school of scholars. The boy put his back into the work, his long pole pushed off the bottom. They were coming into the current, into the cross current of the Bhagirathi, the bigger river that intersected the Jalangi. Here the water was a darker green. The boy said, I have heard some stories about those times. Then it's true. God walked the earth here in Gaudadesh. How did you come by these books? Are you a seller of books? No, my son. The history of Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda was recorded in different places by their followers, replied Vrindavan Das. The best of those were the personal journals kept by Murari Gupta, a friend of my mother's uncle. The knowledge was passed down within an intimate circle for a generation, but when the number of followers expanded, many devotees wanted to record the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya more formally. They had heard that I was a poet and asked me to write it all down in an organised way. So I was asked to write about Nityananda and Sri Chaitanya. I prayed for their inspiration and did my best, working with scribes. This is their story as best as I could set it down. Is it in Sanskrit, sir? I can't read, but there's a pandit in my village who can read and write. Well, my son, I was asked to write this in our own language, Bengali. But aren't all the great books in Sanskrit? My brother goes to school. The pandit told him so. They had passed out of the shady trees now and were beginning to enter the current of the river. The old man could feel the sun. That's true, boy, but my friends asked me to write it in our own tongue, that generations of Bengalis might know the story. Tell me more about the book, the boy said. Vrindavan Das squinted against the sun. The glare on the river shined like silver. He carefully replaced the inscribed palm leaves back in the box. As he put the box back in the burlap sack and tied it again, he replied, I call it the Chaitanya Mangal, but I hear some others call it the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Just as the Bhagavat is the story of Krishna, this is the story of Sri Chaitanya, Adi, Madhya and Antya Leelas. Well, said the boy, it's a very big book with all those boxes you're carrying. Indeed, said the old man. There are 3 books. The first part is called Adi Leela, or Early Histories. There I write about the advent, divine childhood and schooling of Sri Chaitanya. It ends where he meets his Gurudev Ishvara Puri. The second book, Madhya Leela, or Middle Histories, tells how Sri Chaitanya began the Holy Name movement. There we find the histories of the great souls who helped him. There were Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Srivas Thakur, Haridas Thakur, Gadadhar Prabhu. The Madhya Leela concludes where Sri Chaitanya leaves home and takes the order in the renounced life when he was only 24 years of old age. Finally, the last book is the Antya Leela, or the End Stories. In that book, I write about Sri Chaitanya and his pilgrimages throughout India, especially from Bengal to Puri. It is the story of how God himself, as a devotee of God, shows Krishna Prem. I have heard of Sri Chaitanya, the boy said, but I come from a small village called Birachandpur. In my village, they say that Nityananda was more important. Is he mentioned in your book? Birachandpur was formerly called Ekachakra. That is the birthplace of Sri Nityananda. Nityananda Prabhu is Balaram himself, Krishna's brother. Throughout the 3 different books of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, I give a complete account of the life and teachings of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. They reach a shady place on the other side with a tiny dock. There was bamboo platform over the mud and some stones steps carved into the riverbank. May the Lord protect you, my child. From here I shall go on foot. The pilgrim found a few copper coins in a tiny bag he had tied around his waist. He handed it to the boy. The boy replied, "Keep your money, old man. I am blessed to take a pilgrim across the holy water." Brindavan Das replied, "May Nityananda's mercy protect you, my child. Dayal Nitai, Dayal Nitai." The pilgrim got down from the boat with the help of his staff. He climbed the bank. As he made his way through the thick bamboo that had overgrown the abandoned dock, he could see the boy disappearing on the river. He found a tamarind tree by the road. The sun was overhead now. The pilgrim had been travelling alone for 4 days. He knew the city of Ekachakra had changed since his last visit, but he had been there often as a young man. Thank you so much, everybody. More to follow, and I hope you enjoyed the story so far. Take care. God bless. Have a lovely day. Nitai Gora Haribol.